Right now, somewhere in America, a brand new 600 horsepower outboard is sitting on a trailer, 50 hours on the clock, maybe less. And it's selling for tens of thousands of dollars below what it cost just 2 years ago. This isn't a fire sale. This is a reckoning. The biggest names in the marine industry are bleeding. Dealers are drowning in inventory, and buyers who paid top dollar during the boom are walking away from their boats and their loans. So what happened? How did the most powerful outboards ever built become the biggest bargains on the water? Before we go any further, if you've been waiting to buy your dream motor, drop a comment below and tell me. Are you ready to pull the trigger at 2025? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive into the collapse that nobody saw coming and what it means for you. In early 2020, the world stopped moving. Flights were grounded, restaurants closed, beaches were taped off. But something strange happened at marinas across America. They stayed open, and millions of people, trapped inside their homes, suddenly realized there was one place they could still escape to: the water. What followed was the largest boat-buying frenzy in more than a decade. Nearly 500,000 first-time buyers flooded into dealerships in 2020 alone, and then again in 2021. These weren't experienced boaters. They were families canceling vacations and putting that money towards something tangible, something that felt like freedom when freedom was hard to find. Manufacturers scrambled to keep up. Wait lists stretched for months, in some cases years. Dealers who once negotiated prices now simply took orders. And at the top of this feeding frenzy sat the high-horsepower outboard market, the crown jewel of recreational boating. Then, in February 2021, Mercury Marine unveiled its masterpiece, the Verado Vi12 600. 600 horsepower packed into a single outboard engine. It featured the industry's first 2-speed automatic transmission, contra-rotating propellers that eliminated torque steer, and a steerable gear case that allowed 45-degree turns under joystick control. Technology that had never existed on an outboard before. On paper, it was revolutionary. On the water, it was untouchable. Boat builders lined up for allocations. Buyers put down deposits without ever seeing one in person. A single V12 carried a price tag north of $100,000, and people paid it gladly. By 2022, Florida alone recorded $6.3 billion in boat sales. The marine industry wasn't just growing, it was exploding. Mercury Marine's parent company, Brunswick Corporation, reported record revenues. Market share climbed. And the message from every corner of the industry was the same: this is just the beginning. But beneath the celebration, cracks were forming. Not in the engines, not in the boats. In the very foundation the boom was built on. For a while, the formula held. Buyers absorbed the price increases. Dealers stocked aggressively, and manufacturers pushed production harder than ever before. The machine was running at full throttle, but machines eventually overheat. In 2022, the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates to combat inflation. At first, the boating industry barely noticed. Demand was still strong. Backlogs were still deep. But by 2023, the effects were impossible to ignore. Boat loan rates that had hovered near 4% during the pandemic climbed past 7%, then 8%. For borrowers with less than perfect credit, rates pushed toward 10% or higher. The math changed overnight. A monthly payment on a $150,000 boat jumped by hundreds of dollars. And the first-time buyers who had rushed in during COVID, many of them stretching their budgets already, stopped showing up. The showrooms that had been stripped bare just 2 years earlier began filling up again. This time, with boats nobody was buying. Brunswick Corporation's first quarter of 2024 told the story in brutal clarity. Mercury Marine's propulsion segment, the heart of the company's profits, reported sales down 23%. The boat division fell 26%. Dealer inventories swelled to nearly 37 weeks of supply, far above healthy levels. The pipeline was backing up. And then there were the engines themselves. In August 2023, regulators in the United Kingdom issued a formal product recall for the V12 Verado 600. The problem was the steering position sensor. When it malfunctioned, the system would limit thrust and steering capability, a serious issue on an engine designed to power boats weighing tens of thousands of pounds. Mercury responded with software updates and replacement parts. But on owner forums, the complaints kept coming. Steering sensor failures, oil leaks, gear case housing seals breaking down. One owner who had invested over $300,000 in a quad setup wrote that his boats had been stuck at the dock for weeks. The engines that were supposed to symbolize the future were now symbolizing something else entirely: risk. By mid-2024, the numbers were everywhere, and none of them were good. Global boat sales dropped more than 9% in the first half of the year compared to 2023. Used boat sales fell even harder, down 12.4%. But perhaps the most telling statistic was this: boats that were only 1 year old were now sitting on the market for 75 additional days compared to the year before. Nearly brand new vessels, some with barely a season of use, were struggling to find buyers at any price. The National Marine Manufacturers Association estimated that new powerboat retail sales had fallen as much as 12% for the full year. That brought the total down to somewhere between 230,000 and 240,000 units, levels not seen since before the pandemic. The COVID boom had created a surge of demand. Now the hangover had arrived. Dealers were caught in the middle. Many had ordered aggressively during the boom years, expecting the momentum to continue. Instead, they found themselves sitting on aging inventory while paying elevated interest rates on their floor plans. Some responded by slashing prices. Others began shedding entry-level brands entirely, names like Robalo, Monaco, and Sweetwater, choosing instead to focus on luxury buyers who paid cash and didn't need financing. The pain spread across the Atlantic as well. Beneteau Group, one of the largest boat manufacturers in the world, reported that yacht sales in the Americas had cratered nearly 50% year-over-year in the first half of 2024. The collapse wasn't limited to one brand or one country. It was systemic. And beneath all of it sat the engines. Thousands of low-hour outboards, motors with 50, 100, 200 hours of runtime, began flooding the resale market. Sellers who had paid full price during the frenzy were now listing them at discounts that would have seemed impossible just 2 years earlier. For buyers with patience and cash, it was an opportunity. For everyone else, it was a painful lesson in market timing. So what went wrong? The engines still worked. The boats still floated. The technology was more advanced than ever. Yet the market collapsed anyway. Industry analysts say the answer has nothing to do with engineering. It has everything to do with economics. Matt Gruen, president of the Marine Retailers Association of the Americas, put it plainly. He pointed to the compounding impact of inflation on boat prices. He noted that interest rates had reached their highest levels in years. And he observed that consumers had been hearing predictions of recession for so long that many simply stopped spending on big-ticket items altogether. The psychology of the market had shifted. Fear replaced excitement. The numbers support this. Mercury Marine still dominates the outboard industry. It commands nearly 48% of the United States market and an even larger share in Europe, roughly 55%. In the high horsepower segment above 150 horsepower, Mercury's grip is even tighter. The company hasn't lost its position. It has lost volume. Brunswick Corporation's leadership acknowledged as much in their 2025 guidance. They projected net sales between $5.2 and $5.6 billion, a modest outlook that specifically cited weakness in value products. The strategy going forward would prioritize premium and core segments. In other words, the company was betting on wealthy buyers who could afford to pay cash rather than middle-market consumers who needed financing. This pivot reflects a broader truth about the boating industry. It has always been cyclical. Booms come and go. But this cycle may be different. Electric outboards from companies like Torqeedo, Pure Watercraft, and ePropulsion are gaining ground. Environmental regulations, especially in Europe, are pushing manufacturers toward cleaner propulsion systems. The era of cheap gasoline and easy credit that fueled the high-horsepower revolution may not return in the same form. The collapse was not caused by bad products. It was caused by assumptions about endless demand, about low interest rates, about buyers who would pay any price. Those assumptions were never as solid as they seemed. So where does this leave the person watching right now? The buyer scans listings late at night. The dealer is trying to move inventory before the next model year arrives. The dreamer who has always wanted a boat, but never pulled the trigger. For now, it leaves them with something rare in this industry. Options. Low-hour outboards that would have sold at full manufacturer pricing 2 years ago are now available at significant discounts. Motors with barely a season of runtime are sitting on trailers across the country, waiting for someone to recognize the opportunity. For the informed buyer, someone willing to do the research, inspect the equipment, and negotiate patiently, 2020 may represent the best buying conditions in a decade. But for the industry itself, the lessons are harder to swallow. Brunswick Corporation projects a gradual recovery if financial conditions ease. United States boating expenditures are expected to remain near $55 billion in 2025, and a new generation of buyers is emerging. For the first time in years, boat buyers under 40 now outnumber those over 60. The market is not dying, it is transforming. Yet transformation is never painless. The manufacturers who built empires on high-horsepower gasoline engines must now reckon with electric alternatives and tightening emission standards. The dealers who expanded aggressively during the boom must now manage leaner operations. And the buyers who paid peak prices during the frenzy must decide whether to hold on or cut their losses. The outboard market did not collapse because the products failed. It collapsed because the conditions that created it, pandemic demand, near-zero interest rates, and a flood of first-time buyers, were temporary. And when temporary conditions meet permanent expectations, something has to give. For those standing on the shore today, the wreckage of one era may become the foundation of the next, but only for those who understand what they are looking at. The current will not wait. The question is whether you are ready to step in.